Well, good morning. So I finally was able to buy like a little stand for my phone so I don't have to sit here and hold it. Currently in a hotel. Was originally going to Massachusetts. That contract didn't fall through kind of at the last minute. The census was low, so they were like, we really uh, don't need the contract, so we're going to cancel it. So I ended up going to Arizona. So I drove all the way from Nebraska back to PA on my way to Massachusetts to end up more than likely going to be driving all the way back to Arizona. I'll probably take my time, leave a little bit early, get a hotel. It's going to take about 2 day drive to get out there. The reason being is because I'm going to need a car anyway while I'm out there. So um, instead of leaving my car, let's say if I was going to leave it at the airport, I'd pay a shit ton of money leaving it at the airport. It is a lot of miles, but I might not necessarily come all the way back. Still, uh, renting out my apartment that kind of got screwed over with me. I had somebody in there long term, and then they kind of dipped on me last minute, so that kind of screwed me over. So I tossed it up actually on Airbnb, so that's been working, and I got somebody else that's kind of been running it. Topic for the video that I did want to discuss, which is part of my plans for the year. So I put out quite a bit of plans, things that I want to achieve for the year, and of course, one of my goals was for 45 to have a kid planned. And of course, I wasn't doing it in America. I had talked about that. You should not be having children in America. The risk, especially if you're an industrious individual and you work hard and you plan on making a business, like I plan on going back into business, you put yourself excuse me, into too much risk because if things go wrong, you can get B2'd. She can just say, I'm not happy. I want out. I want half. I want alimony. I want child support, etc. You have absolutely no control. American women, Western women, are nothing more than a Trojan horse into a man's finances. And that's kind of why, the laws are the way they are. So it doesn't matter what the women are. That's kind of irrelevant. You could find a great woman. The woman you marry is not the woman you divorce. It's not the woman that divorces you. Because as soon as, for whatever reason, because you can't control everything that goes on in a relationship. You could be the best husband, the best provider, but if she just says, you know what, I want to go back to the streets, she can. And most men wouldn't care. Most men be like, okay, go right ahead. Was it something I did? Oh no, you just want to do your thing? Sure, go right ahead. But it's because you have the 50%, the risk of losing 50% of the assets that have accumulated. And if you're an industrious individual, which hopefully you are, it puts you even higher at risk for the government to be able to come in and say, we're going to take this, we're going to take 50%, she's going to take the house, she's going to take half the business, you're going to pay alimony, you're going to pay child support. And if you don't do any of these things, they just start pulling away licenses from you. And so if you're a business owner, or especially if you want to be going to business in the States, marrying or marrying a Western woman is just, it's not even an option. It's not even an option for today's man, for the reasons that I said. It has nothing to do with women are toxic, or the woman's body count. That stuff is irrelevant. That conversation should is already being had. The only and most important conversation to be had is the laws, and the laws aren't going to change because America is a socialist nation, and this is what you get in socialism. And women are socialists by and large. Women are socialists by and large, right? They require to be dependent on somebody. And of course, back then it was men. Men individually paid for the woman's ability to sustain and live. Anyway, moving on from that. So I had traveled and, of course, eventually settled on Colombia. I've been traveling there for years. Um, with the pandemic, things got kind of messed up because they were requiring the jab, and then I couldn't get back into the country. And then eventually they dropped that, and then just went with PCR. And I think they're going to eventually drop the PCR. But in any event, it's actually quite easy to go to from Mexico to Colombia than it is obviously from Colombia to the States, for them, of course. So you can travel a lot within Latin America, and your significant other doesn't need to get a visa because they can just travel with their passport. So a good area to get into is in for if you're a man looking to have family abroad, is right there in Mexico. You can build homes, you can start businesses. There's already a very large group of expats that moved to Mexico a very long time ago. A lot of them, oddly, being Canadians. You have a lot of Canadians and Europeans. There's a good considerable group, like an enclave, that live down there. Especially, it just depends on where in Mexico you want to live. And then you can build there, have your family move over or start a family there, or meet somebody in Mexico. The reason being is because the environment is different and the laws are different. The laws are not designed to try to steal money from men. This is what you get in socialism. And of course, it's a patriarchal society. Both Mexico, that's why the border is open, and that's why the government pulls from the southern border. Why? Because they're pulling from patriarchal countries, right? Which is why they're able to. This is why they're able to get people to come over the border, because those people are reproducing, whereas the people here in America are not. Like I said before in many of my other videos, 51% of all births are Latino. 51% of all births in America are Latino, and many of these individuals, of course, are coming across the border. And so, if you're looking to have a family, if you're looking to have a kid, I don't recommend doing it here. Not because of the women, not because their body count, their 304s or whatever you want to call them. They're promiscuous. Men are promiscuous as well, and it's men's promiscuity that has led us down this road. And so, no matter where you go, don't take that culture with you. It's the promiscuous culture that causes poverty, because you end up with single mothers, single and women. By and large, you can just look this up online. Most single women vote Democrat. Most single mothers vote Democrat. Most married women vote Republican. And it's not because they're Democrat or because they're Republican. It's because one is relying upon their husband, and so obviously they're not for higher taxes. The other one has no husband and doesn't have a way to get a husband. So what do? They vote for it. They vote for resources, right? They vote for the men's resources. And so when you understand that simple dynamic, that's the only thing that should matter. Is that allowable in places like Mexico? Is it allowable in places like Colombia? No, because they don't have socialism. You go to Colombia, you go to Mexico, it's a real economy. You see a lot of people doing a lot of small jobs, little simple. It's a very simplistic economy, and it's why the cost of living is very cheap in many of these places, because they don't have socialism. That's why you see a lot of the immigrants in Germany, in Europe, and they bypass certain countries because Sweden has the most welfare, or places like Germany will have the highest amount of welfare, and so the migrants coming through the country, they're like, hey, we're just stopping by. We're not stopping in your country. We're coming for the welfare. And of course, they're hoping that these individuals are gonna be productive. It's not gonna happen. But in any event, this is what basically the goal is for this year, probably sometime by the end of the year. And it doesn't cost that much. I want to touch briefly on cost. You could probably do it. Some people talk about, oh, you need to get a surrogate and you're going to pay, $100,000. You don't need to do all that. You can find a woman who understands, the female role. And it's not just something that's limited to the States. You can do this in, like Eastern Europe. If you're of European descent and you want to find somebody, with similar background, you can do it in Europe. It's just a little bit further away. It's a little bit further, obviously, if you live in America, whereas Mexico is right here, right? We're on the same continent in, the Americas. And for me, being Hispanic, it's easier to do it, obviously, in places like in Colombia or in Mexico. So you have options, especially, like if you're a Black American and you have good work ethic and a good job, good career, etc. You can find Afro Latinos. There's plenty of them. If that's what you wanted to. If you're like, oh, I want to keep it in the same skin color. For some people, they're like, oh, I only want to procreate with my own, which is kind of irrelevant, since the Bible says, out of one man, God created all nations. No, I should say, out of all nations, we're created via one man. If that's the case, plenty of Afro Latinos. No reason to pick the women in America, especially when you see how many Black American women are today. You know, like the you see very similar stats of child child rearing by themselves. Don't recommend it. Don't recommend it at all. You could find what you're looking for in places like in Mexico. Now, of course, you're gonna have to travel back and forth, and that's one of the good things about me. I work as a travel nurse, so I don't have to worry about I'm leaving my locale or I'm leaving my home, etc. I don't even have a home. Shit, I go from hospital to hospital to hotel to a relative's home, and then I'm right back on the road. Going to wherever the money is, and that's one of the benefits. I kind of live like a vagabond basically, and I can just travel to wherever I can make the most. And in terms of cost, I'd say comfortably you could do, depending upon obviously where, in Colombia and in Mexico, for I'd say 500 a month, between 350 and 500 a month. Between 350 and 500 a month will be enough, depending upon where it is. Obviously, if you're in places like Medellin, maybe certain places in Bogota, like if you're like literally right in the heart of the city, or in the north, which is a little bit more wealthier in that area, it's obviously dependent. But for 350 to 500, you can easily do that. Why do I say that? Because the average cost of living, the daily income, the monthly income, is like $250. The last time I looked, this was pre-pandemic, so obviously with inflation, I'd say 350 to 500. And so I asked, one of the young girls I met a while ago. She works as a NICU nurse. She's a nurse in Colombia. She works in the neonatal ICU in Colombia. And so you want to look for people that have a similar background that'll be uh, good towards children, right? There's plenty of women that I've met in Colombia that are dancers, or they do spicy videos online. Obviously, those women are not conducive for having children, even though they may want to. They might want to. You have to understand, you know, they're patriarchal, but some of the women in their society are becoming more feminists, so they're falling back into sex work, either via online or in person. Especially if you go to places like Medellin, that's one of the first things you'll notice in Parque Leares, which is like their downtown area where all the clubs and everything are. You'll come across a lot of young women that are just, and these women want relationships, but at the same time, these women are selling themselves. And it's a poor country, and you get a lot of Americans that go down there and make it rain. So it makes it difficult, just like in America. Just like many of American women are going towards OnlyFans. Why? Because there's a market for it. And this is what I said before, that women adapt to the environment that you put them in. If you put women in an environment where they're going to be whores, then you should not be surprised when American women choose that. The reason you see things like OnlyFans and the stuff you see on Twitch with women, shaking their titties on camera, it's so popular because there's a market for it, right? Just like Americans, complaining we need to do something about, all the fentanyl coming across the border, and then Mexico, the Mexican president was like, it wouldn't be coming across the border if there wasn't a demand for it. So you need to talk to your people, tell your people to stop doing drugs. That's why it's coming across the border. It's because you people want it, and you're willing to pay for it, whatever it takes. And so it is what it is. The environment that you put women in, that's why in America, even though you see feminism, you look in the Mormon culture, the Mennonites, and all the Hasidic Jews, you look at all these different cultures, and the women are different. Why? Because the environment that the men put them in is different. The men demand patriarchy, and they live that way. And the women follow suit. The women adapt. The women who don't, those women get left behind. Those women can, as they say, go to the streets. But for all these different these different Christian, Judeo-Christian groups, You know, you look at like who is it? There's a YouTuber that I follow. I'm forgetting his name. Anyway, a black pastor, Pastor Dowell. All right, you look at the women, and those are mostly like black Hispanic women. Black Hispanic. There's some white women, but overwhelmingly when I watch his videos, you see a lot of primarily black Hispanic, and the culture is different. Why? Because the environment that the men put them in is different. Women adapt to the environment that you place them in. And so why are American the way they are? It's because that's the way American men want them. That's the way American men want them. They don't want responsibility for them. They want to delegate that to the state. They want to delegate that to the state. At least that's the way it's been for so long, and it's preferable by both. But for women to be able to live that way, you have to have socialism. You have to have socialism. You have to have welfare. You also have to have prostitution, and which is what you see, because many of these women will just gravitate that way. But anyway, for those looking for it, you can do it minimally, and you'll still. The most important thing is that you don't have the same divorce laws, and you're not going over. I'm not advocating going over there, like you're going to be a tyrant. Some men might be looking for that. That's not what I'm talking about. It's for those that actually want family life, family values, at a cost that is conducive for someone who is living here that has to travel back and forth, and that can save money. You can buy a home in Colombia. You can buy a home in Mexico. You can buy beachfront property in Mexico. I'll probably be doing that sometime in the near future, looking at buying some property in Mexico, and of course doing similarly in Colombia, because it's conducive for what I want, the purpose. There's no point in buying a home here in America. What am I going to do as a single man with a big house, right? Unless I'm renting that home, which is what I look to do. But most of the money that I have, I save, and you have to do something with it. You have to have goals and pursue it. And so one of my goals, of course, is pursuing family life and having children. Don't want to wait too long. As someone who has had I stopped dating in America a very long time ago, back in like 2016, and of course when I was traveling abroad, and I met many older American men, mostly white men, that were already living in Latin America, and they were like, "Oh, I've been here 20 years, 15 years, 20 years, etc." I was married in America. I would never go back. And they live, for the most part, they work in America. They might work 3 months, they might work 6 months, and then they come right back working. Like one guy I met, he was actually a university professor in California. He was a university professor at Berkeley, and I met him in Cartagena, and he would told me he's traveled all around South America, and he was just like, I liked it here, and I spent time. He's like, I also have a girlfriend that I take care of in not Argentina, I think it was in Ecuador, I forget, but he's like, I have family there. He's like, I have kids there. I send money to them, and I come here when I want to relax on the beach. He's like, I have a girlfriend that comes from the Philippines, and she's able to get here with no issues. Man's living his best life. He's like, I would never have children in the States, and for obvious reasons. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that. I got stuff to do here. I got to get my fingerprints done today for my license for Arizona. So I'll be heading out to Arizona hopefully sooner than later. I did have an issue in New York that I have to take care of. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to deal with that before I leave. So I'm trying to get all my ducks in a row before I head on out. But for a lot of men contemplating child rearing, overwhelmingly try to find somebody with similar goals, similar background, so that there's no friction between, obviously, because you're coming from American culture versus going into there. And you're going to have to adapt to patriarchal lifestyle if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for family values, then you're going to have to be a patriarchal man, which means you're going to have to provide. You're going to have to be a provider, so that the mother of your kids can focus on raising the kids, getting them into good schools, developing the proper mindset. There's no point in going to another country with Western values, with a Western mindset, and then bringing the same problems that we have over here to wherever it is that you're looking to escape to. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.